Right. So today we are discussing about the Spring framework because as far as microservices itself is concerned, wherein microservices implementation is something which normally we can do using even Spring framework also. So before I'm getting into the topic today about this, let me explain you what exactly Spring Boot is all about and why are we using Spring Boot whenever we are working on application development, all that. If you want to understand about the Spring Boot, actually it's a kind of Java-based web framework, majorly used to develop any kind of web applications and as well as microservices, especially whenever we are working on Java-based applications. Majorly of Java-based applications, this is what generally Spring Boot framework is what something we will be using. Earlier, we used to have Hibernate also, right? So Hibernate is a ORM technology that is different, but now extensive usage of Spring is what something becoming inevitable whenever we are working on application development, especially web applications, all that. Major reason why we are going for the Spring Boot framework majorly is to wherein we can identify the kind of performance and speed which normally uses in usage of Spring framework, especially whenever we are working on different Java projects, right? So whatever the kind of platforms and all everything, so where we can uh, use this Java for Java applications and all, that Spring Boot framework is what something will be used. So in today's session, I'm going to explain you, this is what generally uh, Spring tool is all about, because wherein Spring tool have an option where we can download it, right? So you can go to Google and you can select it like Spring tool uh, installation option, right? So this is something, right? I think I could see some people who are new to this one. So hence I'm instructing for them, right? So you that simply you can, right? So herein you can click on the Spring, right? So Spring Boot, Spring download, right? So Spring Boot download is what something you can see. Right, so Spring Boot download, wherein you can see here, right? So you can see an option over there. So whatever the Spring Boot you want to download, all that stuff, there are options. Either we can do it for Visual Studio Code, or else this can be used even for this also, right? So we can see here Spring.io. So wherein the Spring tools are used for visualization of the code purpose, right? So that is one thing. At the same time, if this is for visualization of code, and whatever are we installing and what is that I'm showing you on the editor is what this Spring tool for Eclipse, right? So Eclipse is an IDE, which is an editor where we develop the projects and all of that. So you can select on this and you will get the installation process here like this. It will be downloaded. So once it is downloaded, simply you can go to this release here. You can see over, right? So I'll show you. Yeah. So whenever you're going to Spring, here it will be like this. Okay, you get the RAR file. Just click on it and extract here, right? So whenever you select the extract option, you can see all this. So this is all something which will be shown to you. So after that, there is an option called contents, right? So you can see one more RAR file, wherein if you can extract the RAR file and all everything, this is all something which you can see, right? So all this. So here you can see a folder called release, right? Again, I'm repeating. First of all, going to Spring, right? So where first of all you have to install it. Once you have installed, you can see you'll get a RAR file which is called Spring Tool Suite. Okay, just extract here. Once you have extracted, this is how it will looks like. Next, you can go to contents. Just again extract this. If you are extracting this, you get this folder. So just click on this. You can see Spring Tool suit for, right? So this is an executable file which will be used to install Spring tool. So simply double click on it. Automatically, it will ask you the instructions wherein to use it. So if you follow the instructions, automatically Spring tool will be installed. So once installed, so this is how usually this editor will looks like. So whenever we are working on this, especially as I mentioned you, there are different things wherein if we want to create any a Java project and all, right? So wherein we can create some Java projects, or else if you want to create any kind of new Spring Starter project as of now. So we have an options, right? So because before I am getting into the Spring Boot in context to the microservices implementation, it's always important for us to have a basic understanding over how this is to be used and how this is to be developed with. So here you can see there is an option for create a Java project, or else we can go to file, right? So you can open a new file, right? So we can select it. That is one way wherein you can do it. It is almost, this is also an editor, which is almost like as Eclipse, right? IDE, right? So it's like the same thing as you can see it in Spring also. So here you can see there is an option called Java project. If you want to create any kind of Java project, simply create a Java project, wherein we have to provide a name for the project, whatever the project are we going to create. So we have to provide a name for that. Let's say, for example, XYZ. I'm just giving it, right? So let's say, for example, right, this is what generally the project which was be given. So whatever the project we are creating, so project name has to be given here. At the same time, one of the prominent area is to understand about this J area, because in which environment project is being working on, right? So execution environment is what we have to select. So whenever we want to select the execution environment, here you can see there are Java different versions, right? So whatever the version which are something compatible and all everything is what something we have to be seen. This is also one of the key and prominent element. So once we have selected all that, so wherein here we can see there is an option for configuration of JREs and all. So wherein we don't require this time to configure all that. That's not something needed. Now, when it comes to the project layout and all, if you want to create a separate folder for sources and class files and all, you can do that. Or else whatever the project are we using, right? So for example, the kind of project folder we are going to create, right? If you want to use that is to root for all the sources and class files and all, wherein we can install over here. Otherwise, you can just simply click on create separate folder for all the sources and class files, whatever we are working when we are creating a Java project on that. So whenever we did that, so if you want to have any kind of module name to be given and etc. all that, so that can be given. Click on next and finish so that it can be created. So this is how, this is a high level note which I'm explaining you. I'm not going anything in detail. Slowly I'll get to that, right? So this is for Java project. At the same time, even for Maven is there, because rather than Maven project, I always prefer to go for Java projects, which normally our focus is on that. Next here, if you want to create any kind of new Spring Starter project, you can click here. So you need to provide an URL, right? Service URL was already there, right? You can see like start.spring.io is what generally the URL we have taken. Because if you see closely, whenever we have taken, right? So this is where you have taken, right? So from this website is what something we have taken, spring.io tools, right? So this is what from here, normally this installation process happened, right? So the same thing will also be applied here. This is what the service URL, what are the URL you have taken as far as the installation process we have started in the beginning. The same thing will be reflected over here as well as service URL here. Next, we need to provide a name for whatever the project we are going to create. We need to give a name for the project. Next, what type of it, right? So is it that we are going for Kotlin, because different programming and all everything is what something we'll be using, the type of it. Right? Either it can be Groovy scripting or it can be Kotlin, it can be Maven or something like which we have to be selected upon our requirement. Next, package files and all everything will be in the jar files, because jar files are required for you to work on the application. That is something required here. And at the same time, when we are talking about Java, Java is a programming language, because whatever the procedure of the code we are going to write, especially when we are working on this, because in the beginning of the session, I've told you, So whenever we are working on the Spring, it's always important for us to have the framework is being used to work with the web applications using Java. So Java as a language is what something we have to select here, right? So that's what it here. Now here we need to give a description for this, right? So demo project for Spring Boot is what something the description we have to give. So if there is any packages to be taken and all, so these are the packages which we have to be taken into an account so that we can click on next, so that the installation procedure, the creation of project procedure and all everything is what something can be done. Right, so these are the two options. One is either to be created for the package, create a project of Java, right? So using Java files, all that stuff. At the same time, creating new Spring Starter project. This is also one thing. For example, we want to import a project. Let's say there are some repositories where we want to import some projects and all. Here you can see there is an option called import. So from where we want to import this project, right? So from which repository? Let's say, for the example, we are using Git, right? So GitHub we are using. GitHub is a repository where we are storing all the projects and all. So let's say, for example, you want to extract the project and you want to import the project from the GitHub repository, all that. So that you can see here, there is an option called Git. Whatever the space you want to install it, you want to take it, so that you can select it, so that installation, so that importing of project can be done in Git. So because this is majorly we are using nowadays, because GitHub is what something we are using and which is using as a source code repository to work on it. So always nowadays, what is that we are doing is what generally Git is what something we are, Git is what something we are using. So if you want to import the projects from this, wherein we have an option where we can import the projects from Git, is also something which we can do it, right? So this is how generally Spring tool in reference to the Spring framework is concerned, something when we want to work on that. This is how involved something which we have to see with. Next, when we have created a project, when we have imported the work and all, what are the necessary imports to be done? And if you want to run any code or something, like here, you can see there is an option called run, right? So make sure if you have written any code so far, I'm talking about, because if there is any kind of Java related project we are doing on, right? So if there is any declarations we have given, as far as the existing work is concerned, we have not given any declaration so far, so that you don't see anything over this. So once the declaration is given, if you can see the execution part in reference to the declaration over here, and assume that, for example, if there are any errors were erased, right? So any problem erased as far as the code, what we have generated or written all that stuff, here you can see, right? So you can see all the problems, right? So what are the problems, right? So it will describe you the problem from the source path, right? Location type, what kind of type, what type of it is. So everything will be mentioned over here. This is where generally these problems and all everything are something which is useful, especially when we are working on the Spring framework, all that, right? So these are all the things which normally we use whenever we are working on Spring framework and all. This is all something which normally we use it. At the same time, here this is where generally the local server where it is connected with different boot dashboard and all, right? So that's one thing. So this is how generally the Spring tool, right? So Spring framework is what something which will be looks like, right? So if you want to import the project, right? If you want to create a project, or else if you want to edit any kind of activities, whatever are required here, right? So at the same time, if you want to search any kind of declarations, right? So at the same time, any implementation workspaces, if you want to select, right? So all these things we can do it using the search option. At the same time, if you want to update any kind of updating Java Maven projects or something, like here we have an option where we can update. So those are all not something required for us. But one more option is that this is run, right? So when there is a code which was written here, so if you want to run the exact code what we have written so far, there is an option where we can go for run as, right? So you can see here an option we have called run, right? So using this run option, we can run so we can run the code. So this is how generally this Spring framework, right? Spring Boot framework, which normally used for. And whenever we want to work for Java projects, especially when we are developing any Java projects and all that. So to create even microservices, because nowadays most of the projects we are working on microservices, because the advantage here is um, because microservices have different components, which normally for every component we create different microservices. So advantage is that if there is any changes we want to make the project, or if you have identified any problem in the existing project, we always have a choice where we can select that particular component and we can do the necessary changes, so that you don't require to do testing and as well as the initiation from the beginning, right from the beginning you don't require to do everything. So this is something only confined to only to a particular component, so that we can do necessary changes so that it won't be affected in the existing application where we are working on, right? So you don't need to, you don't have any problem, right? So you can, your application will go as it is, and whatever the changes are we doing and repairing we are doing for an existing component is what something we can do. For that reason only we are using microservices, because monolithic is what something tightly coupled, which we used to use earlier, but now slowly we are transforming from monolithic architecture to the microservices due to that reason. So now when it comes to the microservices, that microservices can be implemented using the Spring framework, Spring Boot. This is all about today's session. Tomorrow I'm going to start about this project, right? So how to create this, right? So for the next thing, right? So all these we are going to discuss in the tomorrow session. Okay, right? So we'll meet tomorrow for the same time. See you then. Bye.